Hi there, and welcome to episode 12 of the Nova Scotia Kitchens podcast, Katie's Apple Dumplings. I'm Sherry Graham. On today's show, I visit with my friend Katie in her bright and modern, brand new and lovely kitchen. Katie is originally from Newfoundland and has made her home here in Nova Scotia. We met several years ago when Katie introduced herself as being a reader of my old blog at a coffee shop in Yarmouth, and we've shared good food on many occasions since. Katie's sharing her Nan's recipe for apple dumplings today. It's a simple dessert that is perfect for using up those lingering 3 or 4 apples that I know you have sitting on your counter right now. It is so simple and so delicious. So enjoy and welcome to Katie's Kitchen.
So when I got married, it was in 2007, and I don't know if it was like a thing, or that my mom read in a magazine or something, but she kind of sent out letters to all kinds of family and friends, unbeknownst to me. And the letter basically said that she was looking to compile a book of, I guess, recipes that, you know, were special to me, what they thought were special to me, or, you know, kind of like the traditional patriarchal, set your future wife up with recipes to cook for your husband sort of thing. But lucky for them, I didn't take it that way. But we actually had received quite a few back. My mom had kind of put them all in one spot, which is kind of neat. And we actually got quite a lot of recipes from Andrew's mom. Andrew had a Welsh grandmother that did a lot of baking, and her mother also did a lot of baking as well. Just lots of really traditional type, you know, everyday meal type things that they grew up with. And my Nan knew that I loved apple dumplings. And it's really funny that she has a recipe written down from the book, and it's in her handwriting, and of course, I'm thrilled to bits to have it.
Yeah.
What's also extremely funny is that when I tried to do some reading online about the type of apple dumplings that she made, because there's different kinds, I actually had found my aunt had submitted the recipe to the St. John's paper in Newfoundland, and it was a completely different recipe that she had written down and submitted on behalf of my Nan. So it's really kind of funny that there's one version here in front of me, and there's one version on the internet, on the Evening Telegram's website, and they are similar, but there's definitely some differences in measurements and an extra ingredient or two on the one in the Evening Telegram, which is kind of funny. I actually just recently visited my Nan back in August, and I said, Nan, I noticed that your apple dumpling recipe that's on the internet has an egg in it, and the one that I have doesn't. And she said, well, you know, your father's allergic to eggs. So I was like, oh, okay. So she had like thought about it, and she was like, I will omit the fact that there was an egg in my original, because, you know, you can never serve your father apple dumplings with eggs. So the one that I made most recently is kind of a mesh of the two, and it worked out. They work out really well. I ended up listening to your the Frang Frang episode, of course, with Vicky, and talking about the blueberry. She called it fungi. Yeah. And essentially, I think it's really funny that she was kind of like, well, it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and you just put it in, and there you go. And I think that's kind of the way my Nan probably would have done it. She doesn't follow recipes typically. Recipes are kind of for the folk that
can't cook.
And don't know, you know, how to make stuff.
Yeah.
So, so But this one's really special to me, and she even wrote on the bottom, "Good luck, Andrew and Katie," which is very sweet. And it says,
That is lovely.
"I used to make apple dumplings for the Bennett family," that's my maiden name, "when Dad and I visited Pasadena. Hope they turn out okay. Love, Nanny Bennett."
Aww.
So, yeah, very precious little piece of paper for me. So yeah, the recipe we're going to make today is a little bit of the mesh of the two recipes that I found, and I'm pretty sure that, you know, everything is so kind of loose.
Yes.
To really try and, I think, especially with when I made it and realized that it was, the topping is almost like a scone dough. You know, scone dough is going to depend on, like, the humidity in the air and, you know, that sort of thing, as opposed to what is going to work out that day. So it's a little bit
delicious.
Exactly. And really, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty simple. So I would always have apple dumplings when I went to my nan's house. And in Newfoundland, you would always have Sunday dinner. Always, always, always. And in Newfoundland, Sunday dinner means you have it, you go to church.
Yeah.
In my nan's in Harbour, Maine, her Catholic church in Harbour, Maine, you go to church. Sometimes it would, you know, be done around 11:30. You'd probably shoot the breeze a little bit with, you know, get the local gossip afterwards, and then you would go home and have Sunday dinner. So you would always have to have, you know, a turkey or something in the oven when you went to go to church.
Right.
That is how you made sure that was done. So you come home and you'd have your usually something similar to like a turkey dinner. You'd have Jake's dinner with cabbage and boiled dinner, of course they call it in Nova Scotia, but in Newfoundland you call it Jake's dinner. Your salt.
That's your corned beef.
Yeah, your salt. They call it salt beef.
That was one of my we had that on Sunday a lot too, and that was one of my favorite meals. I would put like way too much butter on my cabbage. Mom would quarter the cabbage, and then, oh, it was so good. So good.
You'd always have that, and then you'd always have dessert afterwards. So it was funny, when I was in Newfoundland, I was talking to my aunt about it. I don't say aunt, I say aunt. Because my aunt Helen is you wouldn't say aunt in Newfoundland, you say aunt.
You say aunt.
And she says that my grandfather would come home from church and you would have dinner at 1 o'clock. You'd have to have dinner at 1 o'clock. And so you would sit down, have your dinner, and then afterwards we would always have dessert. And, you know, it could have been a pie, it could have been just ice cream. It didn't, as long as there was something.
Something sweet.
And apple dumplings were so easy. You know, you just work with what you have.
Yeah.
And so you would have apples, and, you know, pretty much the dumplings are, you know, a mixture of flour and butter, cinnamon, some sugar, baking powder. And depending on, you know, who you talk to, you might use baking soda instead of baking powder if that's what you had. And kind of back to the traditional type scone, there's milk or buttermilk used. But I don't find buttermilk was a common ingredient you would really have around a lot in Newfoundland. So it would have been milk. Sometimes canned milk.
I was just going to say. What about the canned milk?
Yes, definitely canned milk. And in fact, that's the transition that I haven't been able to make when I moved from Newfoundland to Nova Scotia. Everybody in Nova Scotia takes their tea with fresh milk.
Yeah.
And I always have, when I go to my nan's, it has to be in a china cup, because that's what company drink out of. It has to be a china cup, and you have to have canned milk in your tea. She drinks only Red Rose, and Newfoundlanders often drink their tea with sugar, so there's got to be some sugar in it as well. So
I won't judge you for it.
no. And it's funny because a lot of people do.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
You can have your tea however you like it.
So I've got some apple. They're Honeycrisp.
They are gorgeous. They from Evelyn?
At the market.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we picked those up this morning. And
I don't know if I've ever done any baking with Honeycrisp. I love them so much, just eaten out of hand. I don't know if I've ever...
It's really interesting. So if you go on the internet, you can find out all kinds of information, of course, about apples. And I find different people have different traditional type of apples that they always cook with. So my mother-in-law, she grew up in the valley, the Canning.
Yeah.
They actually had an orchard or farm in Canning.
Yeah.
And so she always remembers, and she still does, she has to bake with Gravensteins. That is a non-negotiable Gravensteins. And my understanding about Gravensteins, and we don't really eat them a lot, is that they're a little bit soft, and so they take to baking well.
Yeah.
And where in Newfoundland, where I grew up, funny enough, my parents would often, I don't know who they purchased it from, but they would always get a large box of apples in the fall from Nova Scotia, and they were always Cortlands.
Ah, yum.
So Cortlands was always what we had.
Yep.
My dad still lives in the house that we grew up in, and he has what we called a root cellar, but it was like a cold room essentially. And he still has his own garden, so we'd have bins, and there'd be bins of potatoes, big buckets, like beef buckets of carrots and sawdust.
Yep.
And then there would always be this big bin of Cortland apples. So that's what we'd often use to bake with. I really like eating Cortlands.
Yeah. I like them when they're nice and fresh, like when they're nice early ones. Oh, they're good.
I probably, if I hadn't discovered Honeycrisp, would probably go back to Cortlands.
Yeah.
But I really love Honeycrisp, and so
they're so good.
yeah, and I know they're so expensive, but honestly, like I'm more than happy to spend money on apples, especially like the ones at the market. They're just so good.
Yeah.
So
they're incredibly delicious. And if anybody listening has never had a Honeycrisp apple, I am telling you now that you have to experience that before another day goes by.
So the recipe itself calls for 3 to 4 apples, but I think it would really depend on the size. The Honeycrisps have a tendency to be large. We did get a few smaller ones from Evelyn, but...
Yes, Evelyn is of Riverview Produce Farms. They have a stand on Stars Road, kind of behind the Red Knight, if you're in or around Yarmouth, where they sell their vegetables and fruit, and they sell some from the valley too, and a few other things from local bakeries and that sort of thing. And they're at the Yarmouth Farmers Market every Saturday morning. And those are some perfect looking apples.
Mm-hmm. So you have to peel the apple, of course, which is, the other day when I made these, like, isn't that the best? Like when your mom would make apple pie or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
You always eat the
peels, yeah.
the peel. So whenever I bake with Honeycrisp, because I'll make pies with Honeycrisp, I find that because it is such a hard apple, you really do have to slice it fairly small. I like Honeycrisp because they're just nice and tart. And I like my fruit and my berries like a little bit tart.
I agree.
And then what you do is just grab, a medium pot.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of take the thinly sliced apple and just put it in the bottom.
My mom's friend Shirley would make blueberry fungi or grunt, or I can't remember which kind of version, but I don't remember. That's what's unusual to me about this, is I don't remember ever having it made with apples, but it's such a it just makes sense. Like, well, of course you can use apples, and they're delicious. So you get the pot about half full.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah.
I eat these.
Absolutely.
So good, thank you.
Help yourself. So the recipe that I have asks for about a half a cup of water, and I think it's mostly just because
so it doesn't stick to the bottom.
Yeah, you just need a little bit to get it going, and then of course the apples will release its own juice. So about a teaspoon of cinnamon, but I mean, it's probably, like, my husband Andrew could eat so much cinnamon that it gets bitter.
Overpowering.
Yeah. So depending on how much you liked it, you know, teaspoon, half teaspoon, 3/4, whatever. So we just built our house. We moved in March, and one of the things I've had to get used to is we ended up going with a propane-based stove.
Yeah.
You know what, I didn't believe it when people said, oh, it cooks hotter, but
Yeah.
it really does. So I would suggest, you know, not turning it up, probably like a medium heat. For me, I'm just gonna go, just keep an eye on it because it's pretty, you know, if they burn, sometimes
Yeah.
it's good.
Start again.
Yeah.
So you cook down the apples partially, or like the whole way first before you add in the
You want
biscuity part?
similar to the blueberry.
Yeah.
So you want, when the blueberry breaks, you would add it.
Oh, okay.
For us, for the apple, you would want just the water to kind of be starting to cook out of the apples, almost like a boil.
Yeah. Okay.
And it kind of matches up with how long it might take to get your dry ingredients together.
Right.
So
I'm sure that's no coincidence.
no, I'm more than certain. But specifically, I chose this recipe this year was because my nan is actually turning 95 next month.
Wow.
November.
Well,
And-
happy birthday, Nan.
What do you get a 95-year-old for their birthday? Other than just sing their praises because
They're awesome.
they're just delightful, and you know, she has a whole, like, she's very stubborn. When we went in August, she still has to cook Sunday dinner.
Yep.
She's 95. She's got osteoporosis, so she's little,
Yep.
but it's very important that she still abides by all the things that she's always done. So that usually means baking and cooking for her family. So I've got about 1.5 cups of flour, and oh my goodness, I totally forgot. You have to add sugar to the apples.
There. Now it's more like a sherry episode.
Jeez, how could I forget that? I should
No
have
problem.
made it
At least you realized before tasting it.
Yeah. How crazy is that? So it's about 1/4 cup of sugar, just white sugar. I'm sure that if brown sugar was only the only thing that you had on hand, that would be fine too.
I think every episode there's been something like that where it's been, oh yeah, well we just had this, so this is what we use, or this is how we do it, or
Exactly, like
perfect. I love it. It's real life.
So your dry ingredients are about 1.5 cups of flour. You've got, I've seen some recipes with 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and then there's some with 2 teaspoons of baking powder.
Mm-hmm.
I find baking powder really like tricky. Like it can get really nasty tasting if you put too much.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna stick with the 1. So a teaspoon of baking powder, and that's kind of your dry ingredients, and just like a pinch of salt, and then
Oh, it's starting to smell good.
yeah.
Yum.
You can smell the cinnamon, of course. So you have 1 egg, and then about 1/2 cup. I have 2% milk, but again, whatever you got is fine. And just like a teaspoon of vanilla. I forgot to add the vanilla the other day, and it was still awesome. So, and then you just take, you have your wet ingredients, and then you have to unearth 1/2 cup of butter, unsalted butter. I am very sticky on the butter thing. It cannot be margarine. It's the one thing that...
I'm with you, 100%.
I mean, sure, if you only had margarine, I'm sure you could make it work, but it's not going to taste as good. You know, they say cut in, and a lot of people use like 2 knives. But
Yeah.
one of my favorite people to watch baking is Anna Olsen.
Yeah.
And there are definitely times where she uses her hands.
Oh yeah.
You know, supposedly the butter's supposed to be cold, blah, blah, blah. And that's what creates like a fluffy
If you're quick.
Scone, but
If you're quick, I find it works.
yeah.
Very well.
And for me, it's a lot easier than having to like wash a bunch of stuff.
Just wash your hands. You have
Yeah.
to anyways.
So you just kind of pinch it in, and it's kind of like a bit of a crumbly texture. And I'm more than certain my nan would have done this by hand. I don't think I had even heard of like a pastry blender or anything like that until I grew up.
That's one thing my mom always had.
Yeah.
She didn't have like many specialty gadgets or anything like that, but there was always pastry issues when she made a pie crust.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my mom never would have. Never.
It's all delicious, you guys.
So then you just add your kind of wet ingredients to this butter and flour mixture. And the important part with this, and I just get a spatula, the important part here is not to overmix. Like, I find that we really like to mix things evenly, but you actually want it to be a little bit lumpy, a little bit
Texture to
uneven. If you mix it too much, it'll get tough and you'll get chewy dumplings, which is
Nobody wants a chewy dumpling.
not ideal. So it's a little bit lumpy, a little bit wet, and it's funny because in Newfoundland, you would also have savory dumplings as well. I don't know if you would ever. The sugar in this one is all in the apples. So the dumpling itself is pretty biscuity, like it tastes very much like a biscuit.
Yep.
And so what you'll often see is people will make stew and then put these type of dumplings on top of a stew at the end and just steam them. They call them doughboys.
Mm-hmm.
I always hated them because in my head you only had dumplings on sweet things.
Mm-hmm. My mom, you were talking about, you call it Jig's dinner.
Yeah,
And we called it
yeah.
boiled dinner.
See, and
With
really
corned
the same
beef.
thing.
And my mom would put dumplings in that. Did you have dumplings in that?
No, never.
Oh, and we always did. And it was very similar to that. Like, and they were just plunked on top. So that was our savory
Yeah.
dumpling. Yeah. Interesting.
So you just take like kind of spoonfuls. Again, you don't fuss around too much with them. They're kind of ugly looking. And the apples are kind of just on a gentle boil. And they probably release some of their water and stuff now. We can see it kind of floating around.
So you're just kind of covering like the whole top and just smushing them all
You're just
in
kind of
together.
arranging it to make sure that they kind of take advantage of the steam that. And again, it's not that pretty looking, but darn.
You're tasty.
And
And this is quick. Like, this is not...
no, it doesn't take long at all. And then you just put the top back on the apples, and then I'm going to set a timer for like 10 minutes and just check
I
on
love
it.
you still have dough all over your
I'm
hands.
going to
I love
eat
it.
this. I'm going to eat this dough too. I'm not washing this off. That's a travesty.
What are some of your favorite things about your kitchen?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. So I've been designing this kitchen in my head for 2 years. I'm a bit of a, I would never say that I'm a good designer, but I like design. And so I really wanted to make sure that when we were cooking, we could have easy access to as much as we possibly could. So we tried to make sure that we had kind of all our utensils in one area. So when we designed our kitchen, we were like, we're doing an IKEA kitchen. And what I love about the IKEA kitchen is that, and this is not sponsored by any stretch. I wish it was
Nobody's paying me
sponsored.
anything.
If you want to sponsor me, by all means. What I loved is that they sell everything. So you could buy, you could buy all of your cabinets and your drawers and that sort of thing, but then they actually sell organizers that fit perfectly into the to the drawers. So your organization systems for like your knives versus your big things like tongs and stuff like that, you could have like separate organization systems. I really wanted to make sure like our microwave was hidden. I drink coffee and I have my own coffee grinder and kettle, and I wanted to make sure that that was hidden because it gets nasty and dirty. And so we have an appliance garage, which is one of my other favorite things for the kitchen. We have all of that tucked away in a cupboard, and I can just shut it and not worry about the mess that accumulates there. And then my other favorite thing that we spent a lot of time discussing was the island. And then I like to have friends over and do potlucks and stuff like that. So I wanted to make sure we had lots of space for friends to put their stuff when they came over. I wanted a bit of an overhang so Emma could help us with cooking and baking, or she could be there drawing. So that's my other really favorite thing about the kitchen was the island. I'm just going to give it a check.
Sure. And how long was that?
That was 10 minutes.
Okay.
And you can see it's kind of bubbled up and flipped up.
Yeah.
It probably needs a few more minutes, so I'm going to put it on for another 5.
Cool.
So right now you can still see that the dumpling is still a little bit too soft. I'm just going to check the middle. Because it's not supposed to be pretty. Oh yeah. Because it's not supposed to be, you can kind of get in there and kind of pull it apart and see. But you can kind of see in the middle it's kind of dry.
Yeah.
All the dough is cooked. And
Yes, you wouldn't want it undercooked.
no,
That would be gross.
it would be a little bit lumpy. And
Oh, that's great.
if you were really sophisticated, you'd probably do like whipped cream. But the thing that I don't like whipped cream on this is that it's meant to be served warm, so it just melts.
Yeah.
We've always eaten it with ice cream, and it's funny because when we would eat it with ice cream, it could be whatever ice cream my nan had at the
Doesn't
time.
matter.
So it could be like grape nut ice cream, but
Oh, we had grape nuts so often when I was a kid. Yeah.
or
My dad's
like
a fan of the grape nut.
yeah, or just like butterscotch ripple or something like that.
Which with the apple.
Which actually, would probably
That would
work.
probably be pretty good.
But good old vanilla is probably the best.
Yum.
We have to make tea. It would be a disservice to my nan to not have tea with us.
With canned milk and sugar?
Well, I will, but you shall have
Oh,
whatever you
I
prefer.
will have it your way. Because I usually have my just
Are you
fresh
serious?
Oh, yeah. I'm committed to the cause. I don't think I've ever had sugar in my tea, ever.
And
So I am excited to try it. Well, you can make me your tea. Make it as if you're making it for yourself.
all right.
And I will.
We'll let it cool
Enjoy
for
it.
a minute. My mom is from Labrador, and she actually, when I would go visit my cousins in Labrador, we would always have shelf-stable milk.
Oh, okay. Like the ultra pasteurized
Yeah,
stuff?
it's
yeah.
like, because fresh milk was just beyond.
Yeah.
It was too expensive, so
Yeah.
you'd either have shelf-stable milk or powdered milk. And I wish I knew why. I suspect it was something to do with cost and accessibility and transport and. But yeah, the shelf-stable milk. Ooh.
I've never tried it, but in all of, because I do lots of fermenting and preserving and all these sorts of things, and for yogurt making, it always says not to use ultra pasteurized milk, which I've never seen here. I've never even heard of it till I started reading about it in recipes. And how long did that stay on the stove for? I wasn't paying attention at all to the time. Ish.
So
Just
about
for
15 minutes for the steaming of the dumplings, and then probably, I don't think it would have been any more than 10-15 minutes to
For the apples.
assemble the dry ingredients.
Oh,
yeah, while the apples are on the stove. So,
And we're talking to you, and then it's hard to keep track of where you
so
were.
no more, probably like
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, the fastest 25-minute fall dessert,
Ever.
anytime dessert, really.
Love it.
And
if you have something baking, like if you have your supper baking in the oven or whatever, you can just whip this up.
it was a
and have it
stovetop.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually, you want the
great.
tea to be really strong.
I noticed
For
it
the
was strong.
candle.
I was like, whoa, that's way stronger than I
Yeah.
would make it.
And maybe that's why you need the sugar.
To offset the kind of,
So
tankiness.
I will do it to my,
yep, do it just exactly the way
and
you
then
do
I'll
for
make you drink, and then you'll be like, no, I can't.
Yeah, I just leave a bag in for maybe count to 10. And then.
My mom texted me, she's like,
Aw.
you're going to be on Nova Scotia Kitchen.
Aww, tell
She's
her
ready.
hi. I love everybody's mom.
This tastes like my nan's.
Oh, yay. Oh,
Might be
it's so good, Katie.
It might be a strange texture,
Nope, it's perfect.
but
That's really good.
it's very, like the apple is a little bit sour, which I love.
That's what I love. Yeah.
Sour.
Oh, that's really good. And I mean, it's like so many other recipes. You could come up with whatever variations. If you had plums to use, if you had pears, if you had...
I can
you could
definitely
switch up
see,
the fruit. You could,
yeah, for sure. I can definitely see using pears.
Oh, this is so good.
I probably gave you a little bit of an oversized bowl there, so
That's not a problem.
I'm glad.
And the texture is just right. Like it's soft but not squishy. Like it's still got, you know,
Yeah, for sure.
kind of some texture to it.
Yeah.
And really good. Oh, thank you so much. I am just
I'm so happy you
tickled
came.
pink. Oh my goodness. I think I'm the one who's winning here. Thanks so much to Katie for welcoming me into her kitchen and for sharing this delicious recipe of her Nan's with us. I turned off the recorder before tasting the Newfoundland tea that Katie made for me with sugar and canned milk, and I will just say that I think I'll stick to my usual 10 seconds of the bag in and a splash of fresh milk. Katie did have a really good laugh at my reaction, though. I'm really sorry I didn't get that recorded. You can find Katie's blog at mainlandhome.ca. There are printable recipes, links to the things we mentioned, and pictures of Katie's lovely kitchen from our visit at novascotiakitchens.com. Thanks to Julian Smith for the music, and to Adam Graham for technical help, and for generally being awesome. And of course, thanks to you for listening. You can connect with me at the Nova Scotia Kitchens page on Facebook, or email novascotiakitchens@gmail.com, and we're also on Instagram at Nova Scotia Kitchens. Until next time.